Let me show you something that does not make sense at first, and then let me make sense of it for you.
A 200,000-ton ship is fighting the ocean. Wind is screaming. Waves are slamming the hull. Steel cables have already snapped like string. But one thing is still holding this floating city in place. It's not a giant hook. It's not some massive claw dug into rock. It's a piece of metal smaller than your car. And here's the strange part. If you drop that same anchor into deep water, it would do nothing at all. No grip, no hold, nothing. So how does something this small stop something this big? The answer isn't what you've been taught. Here's what most people believe. The anchor digs into the seabed like a claw, and that grip is what stops the ship. That's mostly wrong. An anchor sitting on hard sand or flat rock barely holds anything. A strong current could drag it sideways without much fight. So if the hook isn't the hero, what's really doing the work? It's not buried in the mud at all. It's lying right on top of it, stretched out for hundreds of feet, completely out of sight. Most people never even think about it. But without it, that 200,000-ton ship would be pushed around like a toy. So how much of this hidden piece do you actually need to hold a ship steady? How do sailors even measure something they can't see, buried underwater in the dark? What happens if a ship breaks down in the middle of the ocean, miles from any seafloor? Can it still anchor at all? And once this system is holding tons of steel underwater, how does anyone get it back? You'd think you could just reel it in. You'd be wrong. Getting it back might be the hardest part of the whole process. Let's start with the piece nobody talks about. It's the chain, not the anchor. A single link on a large ship can weigh more than your fridge. Sailors don't just drop the anchor straight down and hope. They lay out a long stretch of heavy chain along the ocean floor first. That chain droops and curves, and its own weight presses it into the mud like a spring. When a wave pushes the ship backward, it has to lift tons of steel chain off the floor before the pull even reaches the anchor. By the time the force gets there, it's pulling sideways, not up. That sideways pull actually drives the anchor deeper into the ground. The anchor barely does the work, the chain does. But this trick has a limit. That trick only works because the chain can reach the bottom. But what happens when the ocean floor is 2 miles down? You can't just lay out that much heavy steel chain. The weight alone would be a problem before the chain ever touched the ground. So what do captains do when a ship breaks down in open water, with no shallow seafloor anywhere nearby? Can they anchor at all? Or is the ship stuck, completely at the mercy of the current? Here's the surprising part. Past a certain depth, ships simply cannot anchor. Once the water gets deeper than around 100 meters, roughly the height of a 30-story building, the chain becomes too heavy to hang straight down. All that weight pulling on one point could snap the winch, or worse, tear equipment right off the ship's deck. So in deep ocean, ships don't anchor at all. Some just drift with the current. Others, like drill ships, use a system called dynamic positioning. Computers and thrusters constantly fight the current to hold the ship in one exact spot, without ever touching bottom. It sounds high-tech, but back in shallow water, sailors still rely on something almost old-fashioned to measure their chain. You can't see underwater, so how does a captain know how much chain is actually out? Sailors use a system called a shackle. Each length of chain is exactly 27.5 meters long, and every section is joined by a link painted a bright color, usually white, red, or blue. Some crews even wrap wire around these links, so they can feel them in total darkness. As the chain rushes out, a crew member on deck counts the colored links flashing past and radios the count to the bridge. 3 shackles in the water. That single sentence tells the captain exactly how much weight is resting on the seafloor and whether the ship is anchored safely. But there's a problem nobody warns you about until it's time to leave. Getting the anchor down is the easy part. Getting it back up is where things get dangerous. A buried anchor doesn't just lift out of the mud. It creates suction, like pulling a boot out of wet sand. Except this boot weighs 20 tons. Try to winch it straight up, and you could burn out the motor before the anchor ever budges. So how do you break something like that free without breaking the ship? The trick isn't power, it's positioning. The ship slowly drives forward until it's sitting directly above the buried anchor. That changes everything. Instead of pulling at an angle, the chain now pulls straight up, and that vertical force finally breaks the suction holding the anchor in place. Sailors call this moment breaking out. As the anchor rises, it usually comes up covered in thick, sticky mud from the seafloor. Before it's allowed back onto the ship, high-pressure water jets blast the mud off so it doesn't end up jammed inside the chain locker. Only then is the ship free to move again. And that's the anchor system almost nobody understands. Except there's one more question worth asking. If a chain this heavy can hold back a 200,000-ton ship, and a system this old is still used on the newest ships in the world, why hasn't anyone replaced it? Engineers have tried. Nothing works as well. Sometimes the oldest solution is still the best one. And somewhere out at sea right now, a crew is watching colored links flash by in the dark, counting shackles, the exact same way sailors did over a century ago.